Welcome back to the Cameron James Pension Transfer channel. This morning I'm joined by our senior advisor, Jonathan Laws, in Richmond this morning. Jonathan, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Looking forward to the end of year ramp up, as they call it.
Very good. Right, today we're going to be diving into a topic we've had a lot of experience with our clients here at Cameron James, and that is effectively non-UK resident clients getting locked out or frozen out of their Vanguard accounts in the UK, whether that be their SIPP, GIA, ISA, etc. So, John, if you could kick us off with a little summary of that situation and how basically what the situation is with that.
Yeah, so we always think of Vanguard as this huge behemoth, this massive multinational company, the world's largest, or going to shortly be the world's largest investment manager all around the world. And if you know Cameron James, we have a lot of Vanguard in our portfolio. So what's happened is, or has happened for quite a while now, but is becoming more and more sort of policed, if you want to say that, use that term, is that Vanguard has essentially said as soon as you update your address to a non-UK residency, or anything comes around that will get to you where, or non-taxing code, you change your address there's no tax coming here, or you want to pay to a non-UK bank account, anything that triggers with their compliance department that you are no longer a UK resident, then they will write to you and basically say, hey, now we're about to put limits on your account. And those limits will depend on the account type, but most importantly, where you are have moved to.
Yeah, understood. And I'm assuming that in Vanguard's T's and C's, it's an obligation of all clients when they leave the United Kingdom or they become a non-UK resident to duly inform Vanguard and update it on their portal or contact them, right?
Yeah, it's correct. Just like with your bank or any other service provider, in there will be the terms and conditions where it says, hey, you must inform us immediately if you are to move residency. And again, even in those clauses, there'll be specific countries where they're like, no, please seriously tell us where you moved to, because we've got huge compliance and insurance obligations to meet, etc.
So, John, I've heard clients mention this as kind of maintenance mode, so to speak. Could you give me and our viewers a summary of what exactly does this mean that people can't do with their Vanguard SIPP, ISA, GIA, what it is? What exactly are they locked out from being able to do, and what still can they do on the account?
Yeah, so I will carve out US people in the US. So anyone who's moved to America, that we'll talk about separately, because that has been treated even more sort of draconianly. So everyone else, those who've moved to Europe, the UAE, Australia, etc., essentially, they've frozen your ability to buy and sell. So you can have the portfolio you left the UK with, but that's it. You can't buy and sell it. You can't dictate what you're going to use to withdraw. You can't move from one account to the other. So huge restrictions there. And also as well, they will only pay out into a non-UK bank account. So they've sort of said, hey, we can still sort of help what you've got now if you've got a UK bank account as well. Otherwise, please shut down, sell everything and liquidate and move out, or transfer out to another provider who will cater for you more easily or more sufficiently.
Yeah, understood. So they have to have a UK bank account in order to be able to get payments, which is something which is cropped up a number of times because a lot of expats are now starting to get confirmation from their UK banks that they're no longer really wanted now that they're a non-UK resident. John, could you give me a bit of I don't know if our viewers will find this interesting or not, but a bit of a backstory, particularly with Brexit and Europe, and how this has started to get tightened up from sort of mainstream SIPP providers in the UK?
Yeah, so the lovely B word, as it were, nice and controversial one for this Tuesday morning. But so essentially, when we left the EU, we had what was known as sort of a transition period where all the bureaucrats and all the regulators and whatnot were making sure the regulations would fit the two. Clean break, anything that had to like transition from one to the other, because there'd be cross-border business. Obviously, they were our biggest and closest trading partner. We had myriad different sorts of engagements with each other. So it was really important to make sure there was the ability to conduct business whilst we figured out what this break was going to be and how it was going to be implemented. Now that transition period has ended, a lot of these sort of grey area situations where you had providers in the UK and providers in Europe, it went both ways, still servicing residents in the other and vice versa. Now they're starting to be cracked down on, whether it's the FCA cracking down on EU firms or ESMA, which is the European Economic Area regulator, cracking down on UK firms giving advice to EU residents. Now, it's all sorting to catch up, and everyone wanting sort of to get their ducks in a row, making sure they're compliant with the way the world is now with EEA residents. So that is why you have seen in the last couple of years a lot of providers who've just sort of turned a blind eye or not been too bothered, or perhaps they've been working with European advisors or any other service providers, so they've sort of allowed it to kind of go there because they passed the buck on to them. Well, now that period is over, the regulators are getting a lot more switched on. The insurance providers are getting a lot more switched on and scared and all about this because they want to make sure they remain compliant and don't have claims against them and have to pay out all that money. You're getting to a situation where providers are writing to their members and going, hey, look, yes, I know we said we could accept you, but unfortunately now for reasons X, Y, Z, we can no longer service you. Or there's other providers where it's like, right, look, if you're already with us, we're happy to service you, but anyone else you want to join, unfortunately, the ship has sailed, and you're going to have to find some alternative. We can only work with locals, i.e. UK residents.
So what would you say are the risks for people obviously not being able to complete portfolio updates, retirement strategy, etc.? What are the risks of leaving their account frozen with Vanguard, so to speak?
Yeah, so, again, it will depend on each country. Each country will have different rules. ISAs and GIAs, typically the rules that apply to them in the UK, like for ISAs, defer, tax-free growth and reinvestment of income and all the rest of it, that won't apply in most countries outside the world. So, and again, there are obligations for the provider to report to HMRC in these accounts. Well, that's irrelevant, for people that live outside. So you will perhaps think, oh, I'm not paying tax on this, that, and the other, but in reality, you've got a big tax obligation, in Spain or France, Portugal, wherever you may be. Or, America being the big country where, it's a nightmare if you own anything outside of a UK pension. So you've really got to, remember that if you can't trade anything like that, you could be incurring tax bills. If you don't have the ability to maintain a non-UK bank account, you might not be able to get your money out, which is a really scary and daunting prospect to think about. The fact that, hey, you've got my money, but you can't give it to me because I don't have an account that you'll accept, which is obviously horrible. So you've got that. And then also, if you can't trade, well, you can't make any investment decisions. You can't, buy this, sell that, take volatility and risk off the table. You can't plan out your drawdowns. You can't, sell to prepare for drawdowns. You can't say, hey, I want to start taking them up. It's, you are incredibly limited, which statistically speaking is very likely to limit, the amount of income and the longevity of the income and sustainability of income you're going to have in retirement. So it's a bit like, tying one hand behind your back, and there's a good chance with bank accounts and this, that, and the other, that the regulators and the insurance providers might tie the other one for you at a later date. So it's not really something you want to be risking, and certainly something I wouldn't be advising you are risking.
And how many clients have you had, John, coming through now in terms of frozen Vanguard accounts, and how have you been able to assist and help them?
Yeah, so far I'd say it's probably about a dozen. A lot of them are those who are in the UK now and are looking to retire abroad, wanting to make sure that if they do go and make such a large move, okay, a lot of that is all the time is like, sort of visa planning, tax planning, etc. And a lot of times the accounts you have in the UK, you probably don't want to have when you move abroad. So for example, if you move to Portugal, you're not going to want ISAs and GIAs. You're going to want to take advantage of the fantastic Portuguese compliant bonds. So they want to sort of get themselves all prepared for when they move abroad. And when they've done all of that, the first thing you do when you type in Vanguard move abroad is you get our blog, or you get the Vanguard page, which tells you all the limitations, and they've gone, hey, look, this is clearly not where I should be. Where should I be? And that's why they come and get in touch with us, so we can help them get prepared for the move across, even if it's still in the UK and would be FCA regulated advice, etc., if irrelevant.
Yeah, and also I've seen this over the course of the years. Sometimes clients where their provider is quite literally telling them this product's not suitable for you, but for whatever reason, clients kind of seem to almost reverse psychology. You shouldn't have something, you can't have something, to then people dig their heels in. I mean, I've seen this over the course of years of clients sort of holding on by their fingernails to products that they've had from the UK, despite the fact that now they're a non-UK resident and the product is not suitable for them. For example, with the SIPP, whether they wish to complete USD retirement planning or Euro retirement planning, or whether it might be many advantages of, say, a non-UK resident SIPP. Why is it, you think, John, that some clients cling to these products, even if it's actually wholly unsuitable for them as a non-UK resident?
Yeah, I think it's obviously, there's an element of control, there's an element of cost. They might be the type of person, obviously Vanguard is very famously a very low cost provider, hence why, they make up a big chunk of the investments in any of our portfolio. So, you've got a lot of people who are worried about paying fees and this, that, and the other. And that they want to hold on to that. And sometimes they'll themselves turn a blind eye. And unfortunately, like situations like this, that can come back to bite you. And actually that not paranoia, but this, unwavering desire to kind of, penny pinch or to, continue to try and get as low cost as possible can actually ultimately be the most expensive option in the long run. Because, if you can't get your money out, if you can't make changes, if you get issues with the regulators, if you get issues with this, that, and the other, it can be very detrimental and very expensive. So that there's a huge element of that, and we quite understand it. But sometimes in many things in life, the cheap option ends up being the most expensive option in the long run.
Yeah, and John, could you give me a summary then? So let's take the Vanguard SIPP as an example. Say somebody was resident in the US or resident in Europe or resident in the Middle East. If they were to pass away, obviously they've got written down their beneficiaries in their will. Okay, I want my 100% to pass to my wife or 50% to go to each of my children. What would be the situation then if their family was living with them in America, in Europe, in the Middle East? Would they be able to pass on the SIPP as normal, or what would be the process for them if they had a Vanguard SIPP as a non-UK resident?
So there does seem to be, from the questions we've given, there does seem to be the variability here, but overall, they are not going to be remaining with Vanguard. So if you think, hey, my SIPP's just going to pass on to my husband, just pass on to my wife, scrub out my name, add their name in, and they'll take over the SIPP. If you live abroad, that is not going to happen. They will require you and mandate you to transfer to another provider, or you'll be able to take it all as a giant lump sum, which for the vast majority of countries in the world, at least from my experience, is very likely to be fully taxable. So from a death benefit planning, plus, those beneficiaries, they're not going to be able to get any money unless they've got a UK bank account as well. So, there are loads of reasons why, you would never ever deem it to be a suitable option.
Yeah, and obviously with the, sorry to interrupt you, so on the second point you made there about them having to do a full withdrawal down, let's take a simple example. Say somebody had $500,000, they were passing it on to their wife and their children. If they were forced to take that $500,000 as drawdown, let's just take let's say 30-40% tax, wherever they might be in the world, that would be a significant sum of the pension pot that would be chewed up in income tax as per an income to their spouse or the beneficiaries if they have to draw it down from the pension. In the first option that you mentioned, them having to transfer to another provider, I almost feel a little bit like it's like this is the client, they're in control, they're doing the financial planning, but they're going to bury their head in the sand about their Vanguard SIPP or XYZ name SIPP they're not really meant to have anymore. And I almost find it a little bit selfish, because it's a bit like saying, right, I have my £500,000 SIPP, everything's great, I've written my will, fine. But then when they die, say they got 2 kids, both their kids at whatever age, I don't know, maybe age 20, 25, 30, maybe younger than that, maybe they're under the age of 18, are somehow going to have to go out and research the international financial marketplace, which is full of loads of offshore commission, ex-car salesmen, financial advisors. That for me, I wouldn't sleep at night. If I've earned £500,000, got it into a SIPP and worked really hard, there's no way I would want to pass on, whatever age I am, I think I'll be able to make educated, informed decisions on who I think is a good provider to work with. I wouldn't want to pass that on to my beneficiaries or my spouse in a time period where they're going to be dealing with my death. And they're probably going to be pretty emotionally upset, I would hope, at me passing away. So the whole thing just seems bizarre to me, that stay inside something which isn't suitable for you and pass the problem on to your beneficiaries. Like, Jesus Christ, it'll almost be like, here's $500,000, but you've got to jump through 6 months worth of hoops and regulatory stuff. Like, why do that? It doesn't really make sense to me.
Yes, it's a little bit of a, yes, when you think about it, usually you think of a pension or any sort of anything you leave on, as part of a legacy and estate, life insurance payout as well. The always phrase is, it's one final lasting gift beyond the grave. This is a bit like, well, actually, here's a little lasting bit of admin nightmare beyond the grave, and when you're at your most vulnerable, you've just lost presumably a loved one. You don't want to be in a position where you're going, hey, crap, I can't access this now. I need to find someone. And you don't know where to look. As you said, there are all sorts of, insert terms here for people operating out on the offshore space. And again, it depends on which jurisdiction you are about the quality you will find, unfortunately. There's a lot of people operating in that space that, won't have your best interests at heart, that will take advantage of your loved ones, will do your best to try and get them jam-packed with these juicy commissions they'll earn. So not only might you be in a position where they're paying a lot of tax they shouldn't be, there also might be a lot less of the pot left because some scoundrels help themselves to a big juicy commission that your loved ones didn't know any better about and didn't do enough research and made an impulsive or quick decision because they needed access to the money because you didn't make sure you're in a situation where your assets you left behind were in a suitable wrapper for them and of where they're based at that time.
Yeah, and I think that's where I would say it's almost a cost element for people who, and again, I was a bit passionate before in what I said, but I think it's almost split into two camps of people. There's a camp of people, David, who moved to America, is just really busy, growing his career, growing his family, whatever, and they find out this information, they're like, oh wow, I didn't know this, thank you so much for bringing this to my attention, yeah, this is something I need to fix, I can't believe I didn't know this, let's crack on. You then get the other end of clients who reach out saying, oh, my account's frozen, blah, 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 blah. You give them all the advice as to how to improve it and sort out their beneficiaries. And they say, oh, I don't want to pay any initial fees. And it's like, yeah, but okay, you say it's like a £500,000 pension pot. Our initial fee here at Cam & James would be 2%, so it's £10,000, 2% of the pot. But then the potential cost and risk of their beneficiaries ending up having to draw down in high taxation situation or going and working with other financial advisors who might rip them off. The biggest cost I've ever seen to clients is lost growth. If the portfolio isn't optimized, etc. So yeah, it's a peculiar situation when people are a little bit reluctant to actually fix something which is quite clearly not suitable for them. So John, what would be, in your experience of dealing with quite a few clients now who have this problem with Vanguard, what would be your advice to clients in the same situation? What homework, what research would you suggest they do? And ultimately, reaching out to ourselves if they deem appropriate.
Yeah, so just before I quickly answer that one, the one thing I did want to bring up, which is the huge one, is that US connected persons, anyone who's moved to the US, Vanguard wants you out. So, if you've moved to America, you've been headhunted for work, you've gone there to retirement, you've gone to meet a relative, Vanguard will force you to close your account and leave. Such is the level of draconianism of US laws and rules around it. So that was the big one as well. So if you moved abroad, not suitable, but there's a few different things you can do. Pain in the backside, really should be moving out pronto. Move to the US, got to move out. So to answer your question, so if you've moved to the US, the first thing you need to be doing is, hey, look, I need a provider right now. I can't stay where I am. I need somewhere else to go. And again, this really highlights to us when we're looking at providers, we're working with providers, we see these firms who will sometimes tell us answers and go, oh yes, we can accept US residents. And you think to yourself, hang on, how can you possibly do that? Vanguard, a huge American company, knows they as a UK provider can't do a direct to consumer option and remain compliant, but you and 3 or 4 of you who opened up a new provider who don't have any of these checks and balances, don't have the big balance checks, don't have the lawyers, etc., think you can. So I'd be saying, right, if you're in any of these positions, you've moved abroad, these are huge restrictions. Yes, it's not a sort of gun to your head for most people outside the US, that you need to make a decision like ASAP. But it's something you're going to want to be looking at, researching it, speaking to advisors who specialize in this space, because ultimately as well, there is a really, really, really good chance that you don't want to have the accounts you have over there anyway. Thinking of inheritance tax, anything you leave in the UK, GIAs, ISAs, especially relevant here. These are assets you don't want to leave in the UK. Getting them offshore alongside you, when I say offshore, I mean like with you in France, with you in Spain, with you in Portugal, having them offshore with you or outside the UK with you into better accounts that have better tax advantages locally there, not only means you're going to save from better those taxes there, but it also obviously means that you're not going to have these restrictions. You're going to be able to make withdrawals to non-UK bank accounts. You're not going to get a knock on the door from your provider not very happy with you for not divulging the fact you moved abroad. So use it as an opportunity to do real holistic financial planning, because you'll probably find, even if these restrictions didn't apply or weren't as harsh or restrictive as they are, you probably would want to be making a move elsewhere anyway. But you're only going to know that if you actually sit down, do a full fact find with an advisor, and go through it in a nice transparent manner.
Yeah, and I guess another thing here is that if we think about it, a client that's potentially ended up in a Vanguard SIPP in the first place is potentially someone who's not extremely, but very cost conscious, because Vanguard is known as a low cost SIPP leader in the UK. So I think this is maybe where the point of difficulty comes for them, because they've set something up really cheap, and that was probably a very direct decision from them rather than using a financial advisor per se in the UK. But I think there's that level of acceptance that you've now moved beyond the UK, for whatever reasons, extra money, better weather, better lifestyle, retirement, whatever. You're now a round peg in a square hole. Stop trying to force that round peg into a square hole, because it doesn't work anymore, and it can obviously impact your family and your loved ones and whatnot, and the eventual pot value. John, could you give me some examples then of a couple of clients of yours that have been through this process and maybe started off apprehensive, but then we're like, oh, actually, I'm glad to have got this done, because you're right, my ISA is irrelevant to me when I'm in America. My ISA is irrelevant to me when I'm in Spain. I should really have been getting these assets into locally regulated and tax efficient structures anyway.
Yes, and you brought up America as well, and again, providers like Vanguard here are really on top of it. And the reason why they are so on top of it, of you being in the US, is actually that a lot of times things you own outside the US, you own innocuously in the UK, whether it's an ISA, whether it's a GIA, can actually be really detrimental to you as a US resident, for example. Now, we don't need to go into all of that. That'll be for another video or for another client. But you could be in a position next, for example, where, let's say you've moved to Portugal and you've been there a couple of years now, and you built up really good assets in a GIA and ISA, and you're looking for tax efficiency. It's going to be something that's really going to help you towards your retirement, towards your legacy planning and whatnot. There's no tax breaks for a GIA and ISA, outside the UK for most countries. So, you're going to want to get that money out, reinvest it into Portuguese compliant bonds. And I've had clients, been like, oh, well, I'm going to lose my tax benefits to the ISA. And it's like, look, you don't live in the UK anymore. You're not moving back to the UK. There are no tax benefits of that ISA. The word ISA might as well no longer exist now. It's just another brokerage account, a general investment account. Reinvested into a Portuguese compliant bond, assurance fee you in France, Spanish compliant bond to you in Spain. Work with a transparent fee-based financial advisor, charging good levels of fees, high value fees, nice and transparently, using great, fantastic, low-cost, globally diversified portfolios. All of a sudden, not only have you probably improved your performance, not only have you not got issues with a provider that's no longer suitable and won't pay out to you, but now you're getting these huge beneficial tax breaks and structures that are designed for you now, because you're no longer a UK resident. Try your best to forget about Blighty. It's no longer relevant for you. Especially once you become a non-long-term resident. Easier said than done. I'm sure you still get the newspaper, and it still, rolls you up when you read some of the things in there about what's happening. But again, not relevant to you, read the local newspaper, far more relevant for you going forward.
Very good. All right, well, thank you, John, for the video today. Really good level of detail on the Vanguard account. If any of you are watching this and thinking, Christ, yes, that's me, or yes, I've had a letter in the post, or actually it's always been on the back of mind, I need to fix this, I'm worried about my beneficiaries, loved ones, how am I going to pass it on, performance, etc., get in touch below via the link in the calendar description to have a conversation with Jonathan or one of our advisors in the team. And as always, all additional appointments and even advice reports of Vanguard are free of charge. The only advice reports that have any fee are defined benefit pension transfer reports. Jonathan, well, thank you for your time this morning, and I'll let you crack on with your day.
Yeah, thank you very much. Glad to speak.
And as always, take care with the UK Pension Assets.